Maybe, or just, there's prolific,
Wow. Was it windy?
No, it was awesome. Was it windy where you were?
No, but I always avoid Macintosh because I think it's going to be windy.
It's kind of hit and miss around Mac sometimes, right?
Yeah, yeah. Huh.
Yeah,
We're going to have to meet up for a run someday.
sure, man, for sure.
Okay. Okay. I'm doing 18 tomorrow. You want to join me?
18 miles?
Uh-huh.
I'm good. I'm solid, man. Me, I'm only a 5K, 5 and 10K guy, man. I'm not doing 18 miles. That's just that's just awesomely cool, man. That's
Hold up.
18.
Is that Margaret? Oh my
It
gosh.
is.
18
How you doing,
miles?
Paula?
Oh my gosh. You're insane.
I'm
Yeah.
reluctant to even drive 18 miles. Are you kidding? Well, I'm glad everybody's here, and thank you guys for being supportive of the community, and thank you all for being here. Really do appreciate it.
This is a
Okay,
good
so
one.
it's 10 o'clock sharp. We're going to get started here. The last slide I touch base with is that older patients are more vulnerable to heat stress for a variety of reasons. Basically, the body ages, right? I mean, there are a lot of elders and older folks who are just like, running circles around me, around Mac, right? They're lifting weights, they're running, they're doing everything better than I could ever do it, right? But as our body ages, there are just some physiological reasons why, and that's just a fact. Okay, there's just no other way around it. Okay. Let's see here. Oh. So definitely, elders are more vulnerable to heat. Okay, and this is a little 2-minute video one about one of the docs. Okay. Okay.
The elderly are one of the most susceptible groups to heat illness. This is really because of two reasons. They don't sense heat as well as younger people, and they're not able to let off heat as well as younger people. This could be because of their underlying medical conditions like high blood pressure or diabetes, or this could be because of the medications used to treat their underlying illness, such as their beta blockers or calcium channel blockers to treat their high blood pressure, also affects the way they're able to dissipate heat. The best defense against heat illness is prevention. The choice of fluids is a good place to start. Having water all day is excellent. If you don't like the taste of water, you can add a slice of fruit. Stay away from alcoholic, caffeinated, and sugary beverages, as those make you lose fluid. And if your doctor is restricting how much fluid you should take, have a conversation and talk about how much fluid you're allowed to have in a day. Wearing cool, lightweight clothing is excellent idea in the summertime. Try to stay indoors. There's no reason to go outside when it's so hot out. An air-conditioned environment is best. If you don't have access to that, a fanned environment is best. Just remember that after the temperature hits 90 degrees, a fanned environment is not going to help you as much as an air-conditioned environment. If you don't have access, consider going to the mall or the movies or the library or other places where it's cool, like a senior center. Try to eat more frequently and smaller meals a day. Having 3 large meals in a day is not going to help you dissipate any heat. And have somebody visit you, especially if you're over the age of 65, twice a day. And if you have a neighbor that's over 65, call them twice a day and just see how they're doing. Also, have a plan in place if the power goes out in the house. If you lose power and your fans turn off, your air conditioning turns off, you should have a plan as to what you're going to do next.
All right, sweet. So this doc talked about a couple of things about cooling centers in your community. Okay, as it gets hot, okay, our patients need to have an idea of where they could go, right? I know we're dealing in COVID, I get it, okay, but there are cooling centers in the area. Usually, they're libraries, senior centers, places they can actually go and get cool, okay. But that's assuming that people can actually get out of the house, right? Or willing to get out of the house, okay? And we're going to talk a little bit as to why, people may be hesitant to use air conditioners, right? How does anybody have this up firsthand? Like, why would somebody be hesitant to use a fan or air conditioner? Does anybody have any ideas? Just one or two.
Cost.
Especially the elderly on a fixed
Yeah,
income. They
absolutely.
don't want to pump the energy bill.
Absolutely, the cost. Absolutely, right? Okay, so that's one of the barriers we'll be talking about in the near future. Okay, and then also too, you know, this idea also is like, hey, I'm 85 years old. I've been through hot weather before. This ain't hot, right? Okay, it's only 95 degrees. This ain't hot. But we're going to learn here in a few minutes of like how this, as we age, our skin no longer can withstand the heat like it used to. Okay, so a lot of older elders are going off this past presumption that they can still sustain it. Does that make sense? So we're going to actually be able to do a little bit of patient education here along the way. Thank you very much. Awesome, great work. Okay, so here are some reasons elders are vulnerable. They include physiologic changes in aging and other external factors, which we'll talk about. Okay, physiologic changes as we age include changes in skin, decline in cardiac and skeletal muscle efficiency, and decrease in thirst perception as people age. Okay, and as kind of a brief reminder in that article, during the heat wave that struck Europe in August of 2003, more than 70,000 people died. Okay, and it was basically due to dehydration that happened. Okay. So comparisons between younger and older skin. Okay. If we can kind of look here as the aging process works, we have younger skin here. It's able to hold in moisture better. And that's primarily because of the fat layers that are here. Okay. This is able to hold in moisture better. But as we age, we have less collagen, we have less elastin, we have loss of fat, and therefore our skin is less able to hold in the moisture. Okay. Now, as we age, and like when I look in the mirror, okay, I just got my new passport a couple weeks ago. Passports are good for 10 years. And like, I was looking at my younger person passport and then my new passport, and it's like, anybody remember that Indiana Jones movie where they drank out of the wrong chalice, right? The dude all old. That's what I did, right? I drank out of the wrong chalice. I'm looking at my new passport picture. I'm all like, man, I chose poorly, man. You know, I must be drinking out of the wrong dang chalice, right? So, you know, as we age, our skin ages, right? It changes, right? But one of the things that you may read as you start, you know, learning more about this is that some literature is going to suggest that sweat glands decrease as we age. You may see some literature out there that says sweat glands decrease as we age. More current literature is showing that actually sweat glands do not decrease as we age, but the amount of sweat that we produce decreases. Okay, we still maintain the same amount of number of sweat glands, but the amount that the sweat produces by each gland decreases. Okay, which means that decreased sweating on the skin, okay, means decreased evaporation and cooling, right? So, good. Okay, good. Uh-oh. Okay. All right. Also, too, along that same idea of our skin is that also as we age, our skin becomes less likely to take in the sunlight and produce the necessary molecules for vitamin D. Okay, for vitamin D production. And vitamin D is used to basically, you know, help our bones stay strong, right? So as we age, if we have decreases of vitamin D, okay, and our bones become weaker over time, since our bones become weaker, that can affect our mobility to move, especially during an emergency situation like hypothermia. All right, so we have these kind of compounding effects. Okay, gotcha. Okay, here's a little more detail on older skin. If we can kind of look here is basically there are fewer melanocytes, so you have a reduced tolerance to sun exposure, thinner dermis, okay, which is your wrinkling, a reduction in sebaceous and sweat gland activity because of dry skin that happens. We talked about decreased vitamin D production. Also, too, reduced number of Langerhans cells. Those are your those are the germ-fighting cells in your body. So if we get a cut or anything like that, decreased ability to fight. And then also, too, fewer active follicles, thinner, sparse hair. Now, in the integumentary system, you got skin, hair, nails. Skin, hair, nails. Yeah, that's it, right? purpose of hair, okay, other than it look good and smell good, okay, is to actually disperse that sweat off your body to give a cooling effect, right? Okay. So as we age, we have fewer hair to actually disperse the cooling mechanisms. All right. And then a reduced blood supply, which is actually slower healing, and then a reduced ability to lose heat. So people who actually have, when the blood tries to get to the skin to cool itself, since we have reduced blood supply, the blood stays internally where it gets hotter rather than coming to the skin to get cooler. Does that make sense? So as we age, that's kind of where it is. All right. And according to the Nursing Times, sweat glands produce about 500 ml of sweat each day. This is 500 ml. This is 500 ml, right? But on like super hot days, it can go up to 12 liters per day. Okay. So yeah, it's a lot, right? But remember though, if there is no evaporation of sweat, okay, that means no cooling. So if somebody's dripping sweat, that means they're not being cool. Does that make sense? Okay, got it. So the average person has over 2 million sweat glands. Sweat's made up primarily of water, electrolytes such as sodium, chloride, and potassium. A couple of the previous slides talked about pushing liquids on people, right? Giving them liquids. But it needs not just be water. You have to have electrolytes and salts in there, okay? Some sort of Gatorade that's maybe a Gatorade equivalent. Sometimes you can even cut the Gatorade to 50-50, right? They need to be able to get some sort of salt and some sort of sugars in there for electrolyte balance, okay? The doctor also mentioned that there are some patients who may have kidney or renal issues where if they start taking, or if they're taking medications, too much water may deplete their bodies of potassium, right? And they can crash that way, okay? So it's just important to have these conversations with people. So it's not just saying, hey, drink a ton of water. It's more like have conversations with people to figure out what was kind of going on, okay? So going back a little bit with the hypothalamus, that thing in the brain, okay, our thermostats, it senses an increase in core temperature. It's gonna basically tell the body, hey, body, start sweating, okay? And that's what happens, all right? Okay, so remember, evaporation, okay, no evaporation means no cooling, all right? And this is from an old movie called Airplane. I don't know if anybody remembers. That's my age, okay? So so basically remember that evaporation of sweat is the key to cooling the body, all right? So along those same lines, older people are more at risk for heat stress, in part because they produce less sweat from the start, okay? And also too, they have a reduced thirst sensation that can lead to dehydration, which can have grave consequences. And some of you work with people or live with people who are elders. Do you notice a decreased thirst at all? Do you have to push fluids and ask them to keep drinking? Jenny, you're shaking your head. Is that true?
Very much so. It's very, very difficult to get him to drink water or Gatorade or Pedialyte, anything. He's, well, I'm drinking a cup of coffee. That's good. Well, no, not so much.
Right. Well, some of those ideas, yeah.
Is the same thing. She will drink like 3 cups of coffee, but you put, a tiny cup of water in front of her, and she's like, "No, I'm good."
Yeah, you're right. You're
Yeah,
right.
I notice more than anything is their perception of the appropriate quantity. Is that we may run around with a liter bottle of water, and they think if they've got a 4-ounce glass of water, they're good.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you're right. And so, that's the thing. And so, some of the research I've done is that, offering people like, orange slices, yogurt, something that has some sort of water in it, some sort of, good fluid in it, to try to keep them hydrated. But one of the things that killed a lot of people in Europe was that some of the countries, I'm not going to, call out any countries or whatever, but you do get some water from food, right? You do get some water from food. But in certain countries where they had a lot of people dying, their FDA were saying you can get enough water by eating food, right? Rather than drinking. But what happens is that as people age, their hunger and their perception of being full also changes, right?
Yeah.
So in order to get enough water to extract that metabolize it would be like, me eating, a 30-pound meal or something, right? Be impossible. So it is important to try to get some sort of these really quick hydrating foods into the body. Okay, whether it be, oranges or yogurt or grapes or something like that, or even, sipping the water and encouraging throughout the day. Okay, good. Thank you guys for sharing.
Well, the other thing about that water with the elderly, I noticed with my women clients, they're afraid they're going to wet the bed.
We're getting there, Susan. We're getting there.
All righty.
You know what, you got it, man. You got it. There are issues why people don't want to drink water. Right, and you're on it, man. You're on it. Okay, and thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. I really do. I really do. Okay, so but definitely dehydration, right? It leads to basically having a less extracellular and intracellular water, and that further jeopardizes a thermal regulation, right? Through decreased production of sweat, your body's unable to cool itself. So we're heading down the wrong path. But some things about dehydration, okay? When I feel dehydrated, I definitely feel fatigued. My headaches go up, but when I drink more water, I do feel better. But as we age, though, this is just physiologically as we age, our body can decrease from 4 to 6 liters of water loss just as we age, just because of the fat that is being decreased as we age. If you notice as people age, they may be less muscular, they may be less fat, your skin starts shrinking, but we just lose that ability to retain water. Okay, because in a way that it's kind of like a reservoir, right? Our body holds water in it, and our bodies are made up what percentage of our body is water? 65-70% of it, right? And if we cannot have those reservoirs, it just, anytime we have some sort of physical condition that breaks us down, it's just less likely we're less likely to pull out of it. One of the interesting things about reduced thirst sensation, okay, it says dehydration is an avoidable condition. It is avoidable. But according to the 1999 survey, it cost $1 billion to hospitalize people due to dehydration issues. $1 billion with a B. Okay, people, that you get dehydrated, you get syncope, you may fall and crack a cranium, may fall and break a hip. All those things go into play in terms of dehydration. Great. Other external factors, outside factors of hypothermia in older people include polypharmacy, which we'll talk about, and certain medications, socioeconomic status, and perceived beliefs. Okay. Okay. So Voltaire was a philosopher during the 1700s. And Voltaire said, physicians pour drugs of which they know little to cure diseases of which they know less, and to humans of which they know nothing. Voltaire, 1700s. Crazy, right? This guy, they still have the same issues, right? We have the same issues as people, 400 years ago. All right. So the problem of polypharmacy and heat stress, all right. Older adults are more likely to be on more medications, both prescriptions and over-the-counter. Older adults are at greater risk of suffering from adverse drug reactions because their body's unable to metabolize them, okay? And then polypharmacy can put an extreme burden on already weakening kidneys and liver, all right? Group question. Can you think of any elder patients who are prescribed more than 3 medications?
Yes.
What is the possibility that they may be also taking over-the-counter medications in addition to the prescribed medications? Pretty much unanimous, right? Unanimous. Okay. So certain medications and hyperthermia risk. Anticholinergic drugs, including tricyclic antidepressants, first-generation antihistamines, meds for overactive bladder. Okay, I think Susan brought that up, right? And then diuretics used to reduce edema, like from CHF, and some other meds, all right? So basically they contribute to decreased sweat production and dehydration, but also dizziness, which is not a part of this talk. Okay. All right. So I just want to kind of remember that, medical assistance, right, can help decrease the dangers of polypharmacy. I know, man, it's hard, right? You're working with patients, they got a whole gang of medications. And I know you guys have seen this. You'll have patients that come in, they may be new to your practice, okay? And they have like 5, 6 medications from different clinicians, right? So what do you do? What do you do? A lot of times, here's what happens, is there's what they call clinical inertia. Both the docs and everybody's all like, hey, you're already taking them, everything's good, right? And the thing is that maybe we should start questioning a little bit more, right? Maybe we need to, because we're part of the care team. Would you guys agree with that, part of the care team?
Yes.
Medical assistants, men, are not just monkeys that take vital signs, guys, right? We're more than that, okay? We are part of that care team. And the clinicians and everyone else, we rely on each other to protect ourselves, protect our patients, protect our clinicians, right? So maybe we need to say, hey, doc, or hey, nurse practitioner, hey, PA, can we review these medications at each visit, or at least once a year? Why were they prescribed? When did you get them? Think about the reasons for each medication. Is it still needed? Does the patient still want to use it? Okay. And also, do the harms outweigh benefits given her current health status or patient goals? And remember that MA is trying to make things easier and safer for both patients and clinicians. I know it's kind of a little bit of a leap, but I really do challenge you to, have that 1 or 2 patients that you feel like, hey, I can really talk to this person. I really want to talk to the doc and practice these things, right? Because if we can help people be on the correct medication rather than over medication, what are some things that we could save for them, right? We can save them money, we can save them health, right? And we can save their kidney function and their liver function, right? Okay. So I really do challenge you to do that. I know it can be challenging at times, but I think that it can work. Okay. Now the next slide is kind of a quick recap before we continue on to what they call the socioeconomic status and perceived benefits. Okay. So here's a recap of the processes that alter thermoregulation mechanisms. Okay, so for example, we could have heart disease, we can have a chronic condition. Okay. Insufficient cardiac output, reduced blood volume to the skin, which means lower efficiency of heat loss. Talked about neuropathy, impaired water and sodium reabsorption, which can lead to dehydration, decreased sweat production, decreased perfusion in the skin. Talk about the endocrine issues, decreased sweat production. We also talked about drugs now, okay, in terms of how that can affect heat. And of course, skin disorders, lower efficiency and heat loss. So we had some time to kind of cover some of the physiological reasons for heat stress. And now it's time to switch gears a little bit from the medical setting to the elders community environment. I kind of want to chat with you about some of the social reasons why elder patients may die from hyperthermia, okay? All right, everybody okay so far? Are we okay? Everybody all right so far? Jenna, you okay? Susan, you okay? We're gonna do a little check-in here. Aliana, are you okay? You solid? Okay, good. Becky, you
Can I
good?
tell you a story about
Yeah,
heat stroke?
please.
So my husband and I lived in Chicago for like 10 years. And we've been back for almost 10 years probably. But I have family out there, and one of my sisters is a huge runner. She runs marathons, and she ran the Chicago Marathon, which is like crazy big. And it's always held in October. So it's not like the super crazy hot, humid summer,
Yeah,
but not the winters that they have yet, right? The year that she ran it, it was like 2007 or 2008, I don't remember. But they stopped the race after a couple of hours because somebody had died from heat stroke,
sure.
because it was like record high, like almost 90 degrees out in October. and people were dropping like flies. And I think one person died, and there were tons of people sent to the hospital, and they like had to cancel the race. It was crazy.
Jen, thank you for sharing that. You're right. And it's just going to get worse. You know, it's going to get worse, right? You know, so thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I mean, I think it definitely speaks to what we're talking about for sure. Appreciate it. Thank you. Anybody else have any good stories like that? That's fantastic. Does anybody else have any stories or anything they want to put in? Because that was great.
Oh yeah, I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, let me unmute myself. So, my boyfriend is in construction, and a couple of years ago, and still currently, his work van doesn't have air conditioning. What was it, a couple of years ago that we had that massive heat wave where it was like 103, 104? Well, he's got psoriasis and he's a skinny man and doesn't retain water. I think he drank like 5 liters of water and didn't pee all day. And all of a sudden, his boss calls me and is like, he's passed out in my arms. Oh no.
Yeah.
So ever since then, he actually gets heat stroke every summer because he's more susceptible to it. And so I bought him a little like portable air conditioning to put in his unit when he's working and when he's in the car, and he's got the windows down. But yeah, it's something that we have to prepare for every single.
Wow. Really? Wow.
Yeah, it really truly is. I think he definitely spends a lot of money on trying to keep himself cool, you know, all of the construction things that they do, like the wet rags or the cooling vests. He has all of that. But unfortunately, because he's an electrician, he's always in tight places and in attics, and attics are in the high heat, so it gets up to be like 120 in
Jeez.
attics sometimes.
Plus humidity, right?
Oh yeah, plus humidity. So I feel bad for him, but it's something that we prepare for every year now.
Nicole, that's a great story. Thank you, Nicole and Jen, for that. I really do appreciate it. And I hope that people, you know, are walking away from these lectures with something, right? If you know, going down a different rabbit hole or researching something new, because if you're not, please get with me. We're going to find something that is interesting. Okay. All right. So thank you both for that.
My daughter is on a marching band, and every year she has a heat stroke. Nothing works with her. She cannot drink while she's on a marching band, even though they force her. It makes her even more sick. She can't have Gatorade either, makes her sick. And each time she's coming after marching band, she throw up a lot. And she faints, and she's using her little fan around the neck. She has a towel, wet towel, that she's carrying it on her all the time. Yeah. But yeah, she's handling very hard during the camp, marching camp summer. For that week, it's a pain for her, because she, even though we are so close to the house, 3 minutes walking, but she cannot come home anyway. So she has a hard time. She always has stomach pain and all of the symptoms that we were talking.
Claudia, thank you for sharing that, man. And I hate to say it this way, but I think it's going to get worse. And you know, I don't know. I mean, she might need to learn how to play like electric organ or something, stay inside, because man, that's just crazy, right? So
yeah, because they put a lot of effort, because she's on the trumpet, on the the big one,
right?
And putting all this, and now with the mask on the face and the hole over there, it's a little bit fun, but yeah, it's challenging for them.
It is. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Well, so we talked about the physiological aspects of you know, heat stroke and how that happens, but I also want to talk about the sociological aspects, right? Our community. So it says here your zip code versus your genetic code, and your zip code is sometimes a better predictor of your health than your genetic code. Okay, place is important. Where we live and how we interact with our physical environment has a direct impact and bearing on our health, right? And this is going to be especially true during the heat waves and extreme heat events. So I want to talk about what they call social determinants of health overview. This talks about community. This talks about where we live, where we work, where we play, where we age, and how that impacts patient care. Okay, it's like 2 minutes.
Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. But take a look around you. We know that health varies between men and women by age, ethnic group, and socioeconomic status. In Michigan, the average life expectancy is 78 years old, but differences within the state are profound. For example, residents in Grosse Pointe live to age 82 on average, while a few miles away in Detroit's Dexter-Linwood neighborhood, the average life expectancy at birth is just 62 years old, a 20-year difference. But why? Medical care drives only 10 to 20% of a person's overall health. The other 80 to 90% is determined by the complex circumstances in which people are born, grow, live, work, and age. Collectively called the social determinants of health, these influences have a much deeper connection to a person's overall health than their genetic makeup or behavioral risk factors. They include income, education, housing, job security, food security, transportation, geography, and social support. The reality is that health starts long before illness, before birth even. It starts in our homes, schools, workplaces, and communities.
All right, cool. So basically the social determinants of health, right? The definition is social determinants of health are the conditions in the environments in which people are born, live, learn, work, play, worship, and age that affect a wide range of health functions and quality of life outcomes and risks, okay? Think about this as our patients, okay? Think about our patients. You know, when they're not in our clinic, okay? Where do they live? Where do they work? Where do they play? Where do they worship? Okay, what are their social connections, right? Do they have anything else like food insecurities? Do they live alone? Okay, those things impact the entire health. And this is how it's going to impact thermal heat, perhaps with heat stroke. So if we can understand the social determinants of person's health, right, we may have a better understanding on hypothermia's effect on older people. Now, granted, many senior citizens live active, full, and happy lives. Absolutely, okay. Unfortunately, there are many senior citizens who cannot afford to live independently or in an institutional setting, and they are at greater risk for a serious bodily injury or dying too early from heat stressors. Also, too, some older people do not know about the resources available to them, right? What I mean by social norms and attitudes is like, for example, is there discrimination out there? Is there racism, okay, in patient populations? Is there distrust of the government? Do some older people distrust the government, okay? Also, too, is there an availability of resources to meet their daily needs? Do our older patients have safe housing, right? Do they, you know, do they live in a place that, like, you know, has throw rugs all over the place? Do they live in clutter, right? As a trip hazard? Do they live in not so safe neighborhood where they're afraid to open the windows when it's too hot for fear of crime or perceived fear of crime? Okay. Do sometimes elders have to difference between choosing buying medication and food or turning on that fan or air conditioner that we talked about earlier, right? We also talked about, you know, cooling centers. Well, how do you get to a cooling center, right? Is there transportation options? Do they have no car? Are they unable to drive due to medical conditions or unable to walk to any distance because of cooling centers, right? I think I forgot your name, but you said you had one patient who is older, he doesn't have anybody, right? All right. If you look at our fractured families, right? How many people do you know whose kids live across the country who or don't have any, social support to help looking on neighbors twice a day, right? As people age, your friends either die or they move away. So you become more socially isolated. And then also too, I want to mention language and literacy. English may not be the person's primary language, right? So they may be socially isolated because they feel like they cannot speak the language. Okay.
Richard, I just want to say a little something about language. As one of my discussion boards, as much as I hate them, I really felt like this discussion board brought up something interesting, and it was about language. And it was a TED talk by an English professor named Patricia Ryan, and she's a British lady, so it's really fun to listen to her speak. But she was sent to so many parts of the world to teach English to the native speakers. And what she determined after doing that for so many years is that English is becoming so dominant and so sought after that we're losing so many languages every year. So right now we have 7,139 languages in the world, but we lose 9 languages a year.
Sure.
So those languages are slowly kind of being phased out, and we're pushing to learn and teach and acquire English. I mean, over 50% of the population, there's 23 languages that we primarily speak. And we require, if you want in one of those amazing higher ed institutions, you have to take and pass an English test.
Oh yeah.
It's really hard for people.
Absolutely, Dr. Williams, you're right.
But
And so-
losing 9 languages a year was kind of a shocker for me. Wow.
Yeah.
Extinction of language.
Where's the culture these days? That's what I want to know.
Mhm.
That is true. So that's a policy issue, right? Okay. Well, what you're discussing is what they call an upstream policy issue, where you have sources of care or areas of care that are predominantly structured in one language, primarily, maybe 2. Okay. So, why is it that way? So, if people want more access to different types of cultures or different types of languages, that needs to be worked up at policy level. Okay. So again, as medical assistants, we see things in the community that we may agree with, may not disagree with, but I think that we have the ability to reach out and help change policy, right? We have the ability to go and change policy. So yeah, for sure. Excellent. Thank you. So medical assistants can help educate our geriatric patients, okay? Especially dealing with this whole thing. There's a lot out there to kill people, right? I hate being a downer here, but with their hypothermia, it's another one, right? But we're there to help educate our patients. But in this talk's primarily about our geriatric patients, okay? But I think we need to kind of step up a little bit, right? And find our own voice so if we can advocate for our patients. At each visit, we really need to ask our patients, hey, are you drinking enough water? But don't say, hey, yeah, if they say yes, don't stop there. Ask them the amount, right? Because Jenny, thank you, right? Some of you other folks out there is like, yeah, 4 ounces of water. Yeah, I'm drinking water. I'm drinking plenty of water. How much is it? 4 ounces? That ain't enough. Okay. So, asking people, are you drinking enough water? Well, how much is it? Right? How much is it? Okay. Do they have access to air conditioning and fan? And do they plan on using it? Okay. So it's more than saying, hey, do you have an air conditioner? Do you have a fan? Do you plan on using it? Is there anything that will prevent you from using it? Right. How are they going to keep cool? Ask them those details, right? How are you going to plan on that? with Claudia, I think with, I forgot your name, with your boyfriend who's, has heat stroke, you guys plan for this stuff, right? Do they show any or know the signs of heat stress? And one of the things too, I want to kind of encourage you to do is go out and be proactively conduct patient outreach. What do I mean by that? How many of you guys use electronic medical health records or electronic health records? Just about everybody, right? EHR, EMR. You can mine data for patients and patient risk, what we talked about today. Are you over 65? Do you live alone? Are you on cardiac medication? Are you on beta blockers, right? You can do a quick search, okay, in your data, in your EMR, EHR, and find a list of patients that can fit a parameter and be proactive about reaching out and say, hey, this is Jen, from We Love You medical office, right? And we're just reaching out, it's getting hotter, and just want to make sure you're okay. Do you have an air conditioner? Do you have ability to get around? Do you have a ride? Do you have people checking in on you? Oh, you do? Okay, cool. I'm just going to chart that up real quick. Do you mind if I check in on you periodically? Do you know any people who don't have any access that we could, maybe get resources to, right? So our medical assistants, I mean, are we members of the community? Okay, are we members of the community, or are we just like, go to the clinic and clock in and clock out, right? That's kind of up to you. Okay, but I think as medical assistants, we need to be proactive about things, right? We need to seek people out and give them that kind of care before they drop. Does that make sense? Okay, before they drop. Okay.
I want to interject something real quickly here. We talked about air conditioning and people hesitating because it's so expensive. I actually cut my air conditioning costs by putting standing fans, one in my bedroom and one in my living room. I have just a condo, so I don't have to put fans in a million places. But it is amazing how much cooler my place was just having fans. So that's something we may be able to offer people too, is that suggestion, just to get a standing fan that can, like my bed fan, I have it down to bed height, and I have an elevated bed, but still it's a lower fan so that it hits me at my body height.
Right.
When moving. Just want to throw that out.
I appreciate that, Susan. And here's the thing, there's some really cheap things you can do. You can take water bottles, freeze them, and then put them underneath your arms, right? Or a cool towel around your neck, to help them stay cool, right? But the thing is that I would be interested if that, when you go to work, you're like, hey, we have an EMR, EHR. I know that you can do a data search. It's built in for prescription recalls. If there was a prescription that needed to be recalled, you could find the people taking the prescriptions and do a recall, right? It'd be so easy to do an EMR data search to say, hey, how many people are 70 years old and older, and that they're men, okay, and they're on chronic medications, and how many of them live alone? Okay, there might be 10 of them, right, in your practice. Calling 10 people and say, hey, we're just checking in on you. That might save 2 lives, right? What if it saves 3, right? I mean, that's huge, right? That's huge. All right, good. All right, thank you. I was on my pedestal. I'm gonna jump down now. Get back to my slides. Okay, here we go. Okay, so Richard, I'm hesitant to reach out because a lot of people don't listen to medical advice. Right? It's true, right? If that were the case, we'd be out of a job. Okay, people don't listen. You guys agree with that? People don't typically listen to medical advice. What's up? Why don't people use medical advice that may save their quality and quantity of life, right? We're talking about quality and quality of life. All right. Were you guys thinking this to yourselves? Oh no, I'm not gonna reach out to anybody. People aren't gonna listen to me anyway. Is anybody thinking that? Would they fess up and be honest about it? Would anybody say? Anybody? Nobody? Okay. All right. I don't blame you. All right. So my personal belief, right? My personal belief is that medical education alone is not sufficient to change the majority of people's behavior. Medical education alone is not sufficient. Okay. How many times do you hear you need to quit smoking, you need to quit drinking, you need to exercise more, right? There's tons of medical advice out there, right? But medical advice by itself will not change people's behavior. It's not sufficient. But what is? So, let's see here. Okay, good. One possibility is a patient's perceptions. This is internal here, perceptions, okay, on the issue, internal perceptions. Your internal mechanisms inside your mind have a profound impact whether to do something or not do something. Do you guys agree with that? What goes on in the head? Okay, you guys agree with that? Okay, all right. So one public health answer, okay, or theory to why people don't act in a way that is beneficial to them, okay, can it be explained in what they call the health belief model? Okay, the health belief model. So has anybody ever heard of the health belief model? If so, can somebody share? Has anybody ever heard of the health belief model? Okay. All right. So has anybody heard of tuberculosis? Anybody heard of tuberculosis? Okay, what are some of the signs and symptoms or dangers of tuberculosis? Can anybody tell me what tuberculosis? Think about those crazy, scary movies that are out there about tuberculosis. Can anybody give me some signs or symptoms? Deanna, can you help me out with that? Can you help me out? Can you help me out with any signs or symptoms or dangers of tuberculosis, what it looks like?
So let's see, tuberculosis, it's contagious, it causes the cough, if not treated. It'll have permanent lung damage.
Yeah, what do you cough up though? What do you cough up?
Oh, you cough up sputum and blood.
Yeah, nasty stuff, right?
Yeah, it's gross.
Yeah, you see people coughing up blood and sputum. I mean, you don't want to rub and give them a hug, right? So yeah, highly contagious, death more than likely, right? Coughing up blood, you just pretty much just waste away, right? Pretty bad stuff, right? But here's the thing. We're not the first to wonder why some people will not seek or adhere to medical advice. The health belief model was developed in the early 1950s by social scientists at the US Public Health Service in order to understand the failure of people to adopt disease prevention strategies or free screening tests for the early detection of tuberculosis. Let me say that again. They were giving out free screening tests, right, for tuberculosis, right? And people living around them knew what tuberculosis would do. Okay, there's no cure. People are dying all over the place with this stuff, and they're not giving away free testing. Does that make sense? Think about it, right? So the premise of the health belief model, all right, is that individuals will take action to ward off or to screen for or to control for an illness only if a couple of conditions are met. If they regard themselves as susceptible to the condition, okay? So here's the thing. You could have older people out there, okay, who don't think that they are susceptible to heat stroke or heat stressors. They live through hot times, okay, but they don't know about the decreased sweat production in their bodies or their medication interactions, okay? People believe that they believe it to be potentially serious, right? Is heat stroke serious? Some people are like, no, I could live through it, right? People believe I can ride it out. Also, people, if they believe that a course of action can reduce the susceptibility or seriousness, well, what can I do? What can I do to, mitigate or lessen the chances of heat stroke? Will it be worth it? Will it do any good? Right? Will it do any good? Will turning on the fan or air conditioner help? Okay, will that help? And also too, if they believe that the costs of the action are outweighed by its benefits. Well, if I turn on the air conditioner and it's really expensive, will I, get any benefit from the air conditioner? Or I was going to have an expensive bill. I would also have to think too, is that if they have barriers, right, and there are other psychological barriers, they may not want to leave a house because they're afraid who's going to take care of their pets, right? Does anybody have pets? Or like, I ain't leaving without my pets, right? Okay, so we have to really kind of talk to our patients and say, what are the barriers? I mean, do you realize that you're susceptible to it? And here's why. It's serious. Here's why, right? It's so serious that, what you value is your independence. But if you get heat stroke and, you're laid up in the hospital, you might have to be moved to a nursing home. Do you think that might get someone's attention if independence is what's important to them, right? So we have to find what's important to our patients and help them understand what the condition can do to them to interfere their can affect their independence if that's what's important to them. Because we can get all the information we want about this. I can give another hour lecture on this stuff, but it won't do a dang thing unless I can get to the heart of what the patients, what's important to them. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, grandma, grandpa, whatever. You want to see your granddaughter get married next year? Okay, that's important to you. Well, if that's important to you, we might want to keep you cool so you don't die this year. Okay, so we have to find for our patients what motivates them, because information will not be enough to motivate them. Okay, remember you guys were in school, right? I'm in school too. Do you think I'm going to read an extra 100 pages if the professor says, hey, this is a supplementary reading, but I'm not going to grade you on it? What priority is that going to be on my reading list? Right? Same thing for this, right? We have to find the reason to motivate people. If not, it's all for naught. Okay. So again, the health belief model can be applied to multiple conditions: hypertension, heart attack, tuberculosis, the current COVID pandemic, right? Okay. Perceived susceptibility. How likely am I going to get a heat stroke? Perceived severity. How bad can heat stroke be? Am I more susceptible? Perceived benefits. Will the air conditioner help me? Perceived barriers. Air conditioner too expensive. Who will take care of my pets? Okay. How am I going to hear about it? Do I see somebody die of heat stroke, or can my doctor call me up? You have patients right now who have no idea about heat stroke, have no idea about heat stressors, right? But maybe that one phone call saying, hey man, I heard this thing called heat stroke. And now, if we go back in time in a time machine and we hear Jen's story of people dying in the marathon, it's like, oh, these people are fit. I'm gonna put Jen's story together with my doctor's story and be like, man, I might need to want to live. Okay. So we have to get out there. Okay. This is the slide here of how we get people to think. We need to show them perceived severity and susceptibility, show them the threat. And this is the behavior one we want them to have. And I kind of want to just reiterate here just real quick, is that the action of a person to act or not to act, okay, is based on their perceptions. Remember, perceptions are inside the brain, okay? And these perceptions may or may not be based totally in reality, all right? People may not open the windows to cool their house down because they're afraid of crime, but actually the crime rate is lower in their area than in other areas, but they're still afraid of it, right? So we have to we have to figure out what's important to them and why they're not doing what they're not doing. Okay. So, but just as kind of I would call it not really a disclaimer, but just a thought, is that I'm not here to try to scare people, right? We're not here to scare people, okay? We as medical assistants, we're not trying to scare people to do things. Jen's laughing at me, right? But the thing is that we have what they call when we talk to people, we want to challenge them. And there's a difference between a challenge and a threat, right? Is anybody ever thought of maybe the differences between a challenge and a threat? Anybody think about difference between challenges and a threat? Anybody? I feel like Bueller. Anybody? Okay. So here's the thing. Here's the difference. When you think about the fight or flight response, right? When we think about in our medicine, we think about fight or flight, right? When we are faced with something, okay, we have our parasympathetic, we have our fight or flight, right? So we're faced with, I'm at a medical clinic. They're telling me about my heat stress. I'm taking medications. They're telling me I'm going to die. Okay, I'm getting freaked out. Okay. but that's a threat. It scares people. Okay. What we want to do is challenge them, saying, hey, this is the situation, but these are some things you can do to survive it, to get around it. You know, you can have the cool sheets, you can have the fans like Susan talked about, right? You can have, you know, the cool water bottles. These are some ways that we can help you through it. Okay. Because when people are faced with a challenge, they can say, okay, I've got this, and this resources, and I can step up to this challenge and I can face it. Right. But a threat is something where they feel like they cannot make any changes. Okay. They feel defenseless. And when people are frightened or threatened, they may actually shut down. Okay. They may actually shut down. All right. So when we're approaching people, we need to take this kind of velvet glove approach and, you know, tell them, hey, these are the scenarios on it, but we know you can, we know we can help you survive it. Does that make sense a little bit? That makes sense a little bit. Okay.
It seems to me that the threat is an external thing and the challenge is an internal thing. So that the challenge can be something that hooks them with what motivates them. And that's why the strength of making it work comes from within them. Just a thought.
That's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, for sure. You know, and that's the thing is that, you know, here's an easy example. If you have a patient that has cancer, right? And if you walked into the room and you said, hey, you have cancer, what's going to happen? They're going to shut down. They're going to freak out, right? It doesn't matter what you tell them. Their mind has gone someplace else, right? That is a threat. But if you soften it and say, hey, this is a situation, okay, it can be more of a challenge and a threat. Is that kind of an easy example? Does that make sense to you? Okay. But we need to challenge people to step up to these conditions rather than just threaten them. Okay. Okay, potential barriers, threats, and cues to action. So when people kind of see this reaction to, you know, hypothermia, there can be perceived threats, right? Death, incapacity, too sick to live on their own or move to a nursing home. And Susan, you talked about, you know, these kind of barriers, mobility issues, fear of crime, leaving their pets, and cues to action, meaning that, you know, what can we do to help people understand the threats? Okay, good. Let's go here real quick. Okay, that basically covered that.
Richard, did you want to take another break?
Yes, let's go one more. Let's go 5 more minutes, guys. We'll come back and we'll finish up.
Good, you're on.
Thanks. So just kind of sum up, let's get to know our patients better, determine how we want to give our messaging, okay? We talked about challenging messages versus threat messages. Challenging messages are adaptive. People can adapt to a challenge. Believe that a patient has the resources, the efficacy, the ability to cope with a demanding or stressful event. Also, too, medical assistants offer these kind of supportive ways when we talk to our patients, get to know our patients. However, when you contrast that to a threat message, okay, our threat messages, it can be maladaptive. If we don't give our patients the ability to overcome a situation, they may tend to worry more about how they're going to fail at it, and they may not carry through with our messaging of how to combat, especially it's kind of heat strokes. Maybe you've seen this before, where you can give somebody information, they'll politely shake their head and never come back to the clinic again. Okay, that's a threat message. You know that something happened, there's a threat, and they may not follow through with the threat plan. Okay, good. And then if you think your patient's having heat stress, trust your intuition, get them some help to 911. If not, there's having some ideas with trying to stay cool, offer them the ability to go to the cooling centers like we talked about, okay? And I think that Carol brought up a really great statement earlier about putting the wet cloth on their wrists, necks, armpits, something cool to keep that body from overheating. And if they can swallow, have them drink some liquids to keep them hydrated, if at all possible. Around talking about cooling centers, there are libraries, there's also supermarkets, and there's also churches that were not mentioned earlier. Does anybody else have any other suggestions of how people can stay cool? Anybody have any? No? Okay. Popsicles, all right. Got it. Okay. So basically in response to the many effects of climate change and the threat of heat waves, basically Stan Meiber from the US EPA said that it's here now. Okay, our threats are here. We're seeing this in our daily lives. It's no longer someone else's problem. It's no longer someone else's country's problem, but we're seeing it throughout the world, and now it's here in the United States. And the earlier slides did show that it's now in developed countries. So as medical assistants, we need to be prepared to deal with these threats as they come. So there are a few resources if you live in Longmont, but most areas have senior services, senior centers. Okay. Also to Colorado Public Safety Department, all you have to do is call them and ask that you want to do a wellness check, especially from a doctor's office. You say, hey, we have a patient, would you mind doing a wellness check on them for us? Okay. And then the Longmont Meals on Wheels. Most areas have a Meals on Wheels program. This is something too that you can ask them to check on older folks to make sure that they're okay. I think also one thing I'm gonna do this summer is I'm gonna reach out to the local newspapers and ask their drivers to be on the lookout for any newspapers that build up, and have them be able to report to the police or something of that nature that, you know, maybe they might be on vacation or they might be in the house and they fall and they cannot, you know, get safely out of that area.
That's a great idea. I mean, that's right up Jenny's alley as a distributor.
Richard, I actually did that about a year ago. We had a house that the papers were piling up, and the carrier said, we need to call because this is an elderly person. And we called, and it was only like a day, but she had fallen and couldn't get up and out. And we called and did a wellness check, and they ended up, you know, transporting her to the hospital, and she ended up being fine. But a lot of times the newspaper carriers are eyes and ears for the community, as well as, you know, the police department and things like that. So sure. Yeah, well, I tell everybody, stay on your toes and watch your houses. Yeah,
you know, and that's so true. And Jenny, thank you for that, because, you know, we live in a fragmented society, right? And you know, our neighbors, you know, we have to, I mean, there's some neighbors like, you know, I 15 years, I don't know who they are, you know, that's, but I'm just being honest, right? But for sure, thank you for that. And then there's what they call the Longmont LEAP. That's an energy assistance program. So seniors need to be, you know, aware of that. Okay.
Well, and that's something like, even if you're out walking your dog, or you're running, or you're exercising, or you're on your nightly sunset walk, you know, look around and pay attention.
Absolutely. And, you know, as medical assistants, we have that place in our community, right? We have that kind of higher echelon that we need to do, right? We are bound in many ways to reach out. So for sure. And also too, you know, plant trees, plant trees to kind of help, you know, combat this climate thing that's going on. I mean, trees are one of the answers, and not the only answer, but they are definitely one of the answers. So we'll go that route. Yeah.
Richard, I have a really good friend that she's from Germany, and she now lives in Italy. Yeah. And she works for a company called Treatum.
Oh, nice.
And that's their goal is actually, I think that they reached some monumental thing about planting 1 or 2 million trees just recently. So, but you can gift a tree to somebody if you want a different gift idea. You can give a tree as a gift, and they will plant whatever tree you choose, like an avocado tree in Rwanda.
Nice.
And it serves so many purposes.
Nice. Yeah, that's wonderful, so yeah, planting trees. But so let's see here, where is my next slide? Well, I don't know what happened, but I'm done. The next slides are supposed to come up more my resources, but I wanted to go over my synopsis again. Basically, let's see here. Well, I don't know where the slide is, but we went over today climate change and how extreme heat events, heat waves, are becoming more common. Ways the body produces heat and how it's vented through thermoregulation. We covered forms of stress, hypothermia. We covered rash, syncope, cramps, exhaustion, heat stroke. We covered social determinants of health of some geriatric patients. We also covered the health belief model to understand why patients may be resistant to health messaging. And lastly, we researched some of the effective ways to identify and reach out to elder patients to avoid the heat stroke. So I want to say thank you again to everybody for showing up, sharing your morning with us. And I'll hang out if there's any questions. If not, I wish you all a very safe spring and summer.
Thank you, Richard. That was a really good presentation. But I have something, and this doesn't have to do with dehydration in the elderly, but it just has to do with elderly who are homebound. So I work for Colorado Community Health Alliance, and we're partnered with Medicaid, right? So if you know an elderly, or not even elderly, a handicapped person who cannot get out of their home, the Colorado Department of Public Health, they're making arrangements to bring the COVID vaccine to the members. You just have to contact them.
Nice.
It's because we're doing this huge initiative right now. Last week, next week, and the following week, we have to contact 7,500 potential homebound people and see if we can get them scheduled for vaccines.
Wow.
It's phenomenal. It's like my head's gonna explode. But yeah, so just if you know anybody who's homebound, they don't have to have Medicaid.
Thank you. Thank you, Deanna, for that. That's great. Thank you for what you're doing.
I also kind of want to plug for 9 Health. 9 Health is unfortunately not doing fairs this year. They've already canceled spring. They might potentially do fall health fairs, but they would be very sparse. But what they have done is they have teamed up with COVID Check Colorado to do free testing, and they are all over Colorado, mostly metro. But they just started doing COVID vaccine fairs. They teamed up with the Safeway Albertsons Pharmacy, and they are offering free vaccines to the public. The caveat here is they need help. They are volunteer driven. So they're doing these things every week, and it's really hard for people to commit to doing something every week. I mean, as much as I want to, I've done testing sites every Wednesday morning for the last 3 months, and I just can't do them anymore. But if you find that maybe you have a little bit of time and want to donate some of it to helping 9 Health, they really are kind of desperate for medical help. The vaccines, you wouldn't actually give the shot, but they need help with observation and drawing up the vials. But the pharmacists at Safeway actually give the vaccine. As far as testing sites, they are so busy with the free testing. You would actually be doing the nasal swab, and they just started doing the spit test as well, or the saliva PCR. So there's some options there if you want to, I don't know, beef up your resume with some volunteer work. 9 Health is in need.
And I'll do a little plug for BCH. I got word that if any of you guys want the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, we're getting a shipment in next week. So I don't know when, but if you guys are really kind of just gearing up towards that one instead of Pfizer or Moderna, there you go.
Anybody else want to plug something? Promote. I wanted to let you know that I have all of the certificates ready. So if you've attended more than one, or even if you just attended one, I'll be sending the certificates this coming week. I actually have some time. So I will get those to you. And the roster, I have a couple people that couldn't attend today, so they're going to listen to the recording, and I want to make sure that they're on this roster. So I probably won't send it for a week. But they have been pretty good about getting the education credits on your profile. So yeah, and we probably won't do any seminars in the summer. It's really hard for people to coordinate, and everybody's on vacation and does not want to be stuck inside in the summer, I think. So we probably will start again doing a couple more series like this in the fall. So look for some emails in August and September, and we'll try to come up with some more interesting topics. And if you have any suggestions, please let me know.
Thanks, Gary.
That sounds great. Thanks for all you guys do.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, take care, guys.
Yes, have a great day and happy Easter.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Thank you for everything.
Thanks.
Bye.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.